A quick disclaimer before we begin, I recorded this video before I went on holiday, and since then, ASUS have announced plans to increase the price of most of their product lineup, including the ROG Xbox Allies. At the time of recording, they haven't specified a new price, so just keep in mind that whenever I say $1,000 during this video, that's the old price, and the new one will be even more than that. Good times. Okay, on with the video. For the last 2 months, I've been using the Xbox ROG Ally X. No, wait, the ROG Xbox Ally X. That's right, the single worst named product that Xbox has ever released, a company that has no difficulty naming things badly. This device was sent to me by Microsoft for testing purposes just after launch, and honestly, I've been meaning to do a video on it for some time, but the truth is I was only using it intermittently while also using the Switch 2, while also using my Steam Deck, while also using my phone, and that's meant that this video has taken way longer than I wanted it to, but it also meant that I could really zero in on what I do and don't like about this thing. And look, I'll tell you right off the top, I don't think it's bad, but I do think you're paying a lot of money for what is essentially better battery efficiency and capacity, and the whole Xbox full screen experience just feels like pre-alpha at this point. I'll put it this way, I think this is a Gen 1 product. At this point, I think it is too expensive and it's not finished. It hints at a future that may one day arrive, but it's not here yet, not with this device. But that doesn't mean it's bad, it just means that like all Gen 1 devices, there are some pros and some cons, and ultimately it's meant for a very specific type of consumer who kind of goes into this with their eyes open, whereas everybody else can probably avoid it and they wouldn't be missing out on too much. Because here's the stark reality when it comes to this device. You can buy a Steam Deck OLED and a Switch 2 for the same price as this device. And those other devices don't have anywhere near as many compromises as this one does. Like if someone comes to me and says, hey, which handheld should I buy? I'm gonna recommend the Steam Deck and the Switch 2 really quickly, whereas I'm gonna need to offer quite a few caveats before recommending this thing. Anyway, that's the intro. Let's get into the detail. Okay, so forgive me if you already know this, many of you probably already do, but despite what Xbox's marketing campaign tries to tell you, this is not an Xbox. For one thing, it's not made by Microsoft. This is actually manufactured by ASUS and it's based on their ROG Ally lineup with some tweaks made in collaboration with Xbox. It's mainly stuff like ergonomics and the inclusion of an Xbox button. The other thing that makes it not an Xbox is that it can't play your entire Xbox library. It can't play older Xbox games like 360 games unless you cloud stream them or unless you run an emulator, which you can do since it's a Windows device, but it's a lot of work to do that and most people don't know how to do it, so I don't really think that should feature into the conversation. So if this isn't an Xbox, then what is it? Well, it's a handheld PC, like a Steam Deck, but it runs Windows instead of Valve's Linux-based Steam OS. This device comes in two variants, the ROG Xbox Ally in white and the ROG Xbox Ally X in black. The white version is roughly the same power as the Steam Deck, but it has a worse screen, and it's slightly more expensive than a Steam Deck, but you can play anything you like on it, like Fortnite or Destiny or whatever, games that require Windows-based anti-cheat solutions. It's by no means a bad handheld. In fact, it's actually a pretty good handheld if you're looking for a cheaper device that lets you play Destiny and all those sorts of other games that you can't play on a Steam Deck, or if you're really into Game Pass, for example. It's a very affordable entry point into that whole ecosystem. But I do think the trade-offs, coupled with the frustrations of having to deal with Windows, coupled with how well priced the Steam Deck is, make the deck a better purchase for most people who are looking at buying something around this price point, unless of course access to anti-cheat and Game Pass really matters to you. The device that I have been testing for the past 2 months is this one, the ROG Xbox Ally X, which is the more powerful version. And yeah, its main selling point is the fact that it's more powerful. This is the first handheld gaming PC to ship with the AMD Ryzen Z2 Extreme chipset. The obvious question is, how much more powerful is this thing than the Z1? But that question is kind of hard to answer when it comes to handhelds because it's often about how much power the unit is consuming when delivering that performance. The best way to think about the Z2 chipset is that it delivers more top-end performance than the Z1 by about 10 to 20%, but more importantly, it delivers better overall performance at lower power levels, which means you can throttle the power down to say 15 watts and get a 30 to 50% increase in performance over the Z1. That efficiency is compounded by the Ally X having an 80 watt hour battery compared to say the Steam Deck OLED, which only has a 50 watt hour battery. By the way, that doesn't mean that the Ally X always lasts longer than the Steam Deck does. It just means it has a larger fuel tank, but it's still up to you to choose how you use that fuel, either really quickly on a really demanding game or much more slowly on something like Silksong or whatever. So in terms of what this battery has meant for me as I've been using this device, yes, absolutely, I have noticed that when I'm playing something like Silksong, this thing just goes and goes. I'll play for like 2 hours and then open up the menu to see that the battery has only dropped like a third. Like, it has tremendous staying power. And I think that really matters for people who have long commutes, or they travel for work very often, or they just want to be able to play without having to worry about plugging in, you know what I mean? So this console absolutely delivers more than what other handhelds are capable of at this point. And that's definitely a selling point in its favor. And ultimately, I think that this efficiency is the main thing you should consider if you're thinking about picking up this device. It can play more demanding games, absolutely. And it can play them better than any other PC handheld on the market, absolutely. Those performance gains are really only in the 10 to 20% territory, and I think that when you're paying double the price of a Steam Deck, you might expect double the performance, and that is definitely not how this works. And this whole discussion about performance is very connected to this device's biggest weakness, the screen. Honestly, I can't really believe that Asus and Xbox went with this screen for this device. It just feels completely at odds with the premium price tag and the promise of premium performance. It's a very big mark against the Ally X and the Ally, since they actually have the same screen. And that in itself should be surprising, right? Like, the base Ally is $599, you're spending an extra $400 and you're getting the same small, dim, non-HDR, non-OLED screen, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, to be clear, the screen is an LCD panel, not OLED, which means it's not as bright as you'd hope for, topping out at just 500 nits compared to the 600 nits on the Switch 2 and the 1000 nits on the Steam Deck OLED. It just feels disappointingly dim, and there's no HDR support, making this premium device feel very last gen. To its credit, it is a 120Hz variable refresh rate panel, which is good for delivering consistently smooth performance no matter which frame rate you're running at. But this decision to go with variable refresh is the reason this device doesn't have an OLED panel, since Asus have said that variable refresh OLEDs consume way too much power and are prohibitively expensive. This is an issue that Valve sort of solved with their 90Hz non-variable refresh rate OLED screen, since you can manually cap refresh rates on a per game basis and get most of the benefits of variable refresh without any of the power or cost trade-offs. Also, to its credit, the Ally X's screen is 1080p compared to the Steam Deck's 800p, and that would be a really big deal if the Ally X's screen weren't so damn small. And this is really my biggest overall problem with the Ally X, the size of the screen. It's 7 inches, which is only 0.4 inches smaller than the Steam Deck OLED screen, but you do feel that difference, and you definitely feel it when compared to the Switch 2's 7.9 inch screen. And just to help you visualize that, this little white piece of paper represents the size of the Ally screen, and here's what that looks like over the Switch 2 screen. Just a massive difference. To be honest, I think the Switch 2 screen size is basically perfect at this point. Like, when I'm playing it, I'm never thinking to myself, oh, I wish the screen was bigger. But when I'm playing with the Ally X, I'm thinking that all the time. And I think for a $1,000 device, that is a bit of a deal breaker. Now let's talk ergonomics. Overall, a good news story, but I do have some gripes. First of all, you gotta understand that this is a chunky device. It weighs 715 grams compared to the Steam Deck OLED 640 grams, and the Switch 2's remarkable 535 grams. So it's heavy, and you notice that when you pick it up, but owing to some really excellent ergonomics, the weight isn't as much of a bother as you'd think. That's largely owing to the fact that the weight is kind of pushed into the palm of your hands by these pointed grip things here. So, like, hard to show here, but basically your fingers aren't really carrying the device. It's kind of pressed into your palms, and it's almost like your arms are carrying the weight more than your hands. So it's very smartly designed, it's extremely comfortable, and that weight is really well distributed. So yeah, I think that's definitely a plus for this, and they kind of trick you into thinking that this thing is lighter than it actually is. For a device this heavy, you don't really feel that weight when you're playing it. Things like trigger, shoulder, and face buttons are well designed and responsive. The analog sticks are also pretty good. I do have 2 major issues though. The first is the D-pad. It is bad, man, like really bad. I tried to review Luminous Arise on this device, but I literally had to stop because the D-pad was just so unbelievably unreliable and would constantly drop blocks when I was trying to move them, or move them when I'm trying to drop them. It's just, I heard similar complaints from people who play fighting games or whatever and who rely on the D-pad. It's just not good, and if a good D-pad matters to you, I do imagine this D-pad will be a deal breaker. Luckily though, that issue is fairly minor unless you're playing a game reliant on a D-pad, of course. Way more disruptive is the positioning of the menu button, this one here. So this device actually has 5 of these menu type buttons on it. There's the 2 standard menu buttons that you find on an Xbox controller, but there's also a button that shortcuts to your Asus Armory crate launcher, and another button that shortcuts to your Xbox launcher library, and a dedicated Xbox button that brings up your quick access Xbox overlay. So firstly, this is too many buttons. Like, you could have got rid of 3 of these and it would have been fine. Secondly, you don't need a button that shortcuts to a game library because you just don't. But thirdly, and most importantly, if you're gonna put that library button somewhere, don't put it in the most convenient and accessible place, wedged right up against the menu button that becomes much harder to press because it's too close to the analog stick. And on top of that, it's actually basically impossible to press the menu button without also accidentally pressing up on the analog stick because they're so close together. So for real, when I'm trying to press the menu button, I'm usually accidentally also pressing 2 other buttons, the library button above it and up on the D-pad at the same time. Like, I have bigger hands, sure, absolutely, right? But I'm not the only person who's complained about this. This is not good and it's annoying, and I wish there was some way I could just like change the button mapping, but I don't think there is, so yeah, it's not good. By the way, you will have noticed that my Ally X looks a little different, and that's because it's in a case from this video sponsor, Dbrand. The Killswitch case provides a rugged, durable, highly textured skin for the device, which significantly increases tactility while also protecting the chassis from scratches. It has vents at the top and back so that none of the airflow is restricted, and it also has a handy little kickstand, something the device doesn't come with by default. Every Killswitch comes with thumbstick add-ons, which I find substantially increase grip and overall feel, and there's the option for screen protectors, which are super easy to install and kind of a no-brainer when you're looking to protect your $1,000 investment. But the best part of the Killswitch is that it solves one of the biggest issues with the Ally X. This thing does not come with a protective case, and if you were to buy one of those big blocky cases, this thing would take up like your entire backpack. The Killswitch solves this problem by applying a hard plastic crush-proof shell to the front of the device that gives you all the protection you need while still maintaining a super sleek profile, or at least as sleek as it can be for a device this thick. I had the Killswitch for my Ally X and for my Nintendo Switch 2 and for my Steam Deck. It is the single best case solution money can buy, and I thought as much well before Dbrand sponsored me, since I bought my Killswitch for my Steam Deck years ago. If you're in the States, you can actually grab Killswitches from Best Buy, but no matter where you are in the world, you can buy direct from Dbrand and they'll ship it straight to you. They're running a special offer right now, actually. Save $10 on your Xbox Ally Killswitch when you bundle it with a Prism screen protector. Click the link below to get access to that discount. A big thanks to Dbrand for sponsoring the video. And now let's get back to the big green elephant in the room, the Xbox Fullscreen experience. At the start of this video, I said that the Xbox Ally felt like a Gen 1 product, and you might have thought to yourself, but wait, isn't this like a Gen 2 product since it's a follow-up to the Asus ROG Ally lineup? And yes, that's sort of true, but there's also the obvious fact that this unit was co-designed with Xbox, and it's Xbox's first handheld, so to speak. They lay claim to it in their marketing for the device, and it's in this important detail that the Gen 1 claim starts to make sense. The defining feature of the ROG Xbox Ally isn't its new chipset or its big Duke-like grips. It's actually what you're seeing here, the Xbox Fullscreen experience. This is basically a launcher of sorts that aims to reimagine the Xbox ecosystem experience for a handheld device, but its ambitions are actually larger than that. Xbox have been hinting over and over again at this point that the next console they release will be a PC running Windows, allowing you to play games from any storefront you choose. So the Xbox 1080X, or whatever it's called in 2 years' time, when it releases, will let you install Steam and buy games from Steam, and then, you could boot them up in Steam if you wanted to, but you could also boot them up from this Xbox Fullscreen experience, or something like it, I guess, because this is very, very bare bones in its current form. Personally, I can't yet see the sense of what Xbox are shooting for here. The ability to shop on any storefront, but then boot up those games using the Xbox Fullscreen experience, it sounds novel on paper, but I'll tell you this right now, most people who play games on a PC will eventually find their way to Steam. And they do that because Steam has 99% of the games, because Steam has the best discounts, because the storefront and library experiences are excellent, the UI is excellent, it's easy to navigate on a TV screen or a monitor or on a handheld, it's got community features like workshops so you can mod your games, the list goes on and on. Steam has 75% of the PC market for a reason, and it's not just incumbency, because they put out a really fantastic product. So then along comes this thing, and it's like, well, what if you could buy your games on Steam and then boot them up in a way worse launcher with none of the features? Like, obviously I'm kind of exaggerating, but Like, that really is the reality. And just as an example, in my Xbox library view, I can't even sort by release date or recently played. It lets me sort games by howlongtobeat.com, but it doesn't let me sort them by game I'm currently playing at the moment. There's a separate tab for that at the top, but it's like, why is that a separate tab? And the sorting doesn't even work properly. Like, if I sort by install size, Factorio is apparently a larger install size than Borderlands 4. Factorio's install size, by the way, 2 gigabytes. So congrats to Randy Pitchford for what has to be the world's most optimized file size for a modern first-person shooter. There's other issues too. The home screen just has a lot of ads, ensuring that I never want to visit this screen. The Game Pass screen is the same. Like, I click a button that takes me to Game Pass, a service that I'm paying $30 a month for, and what do I see on this screen? An ad to buy Call of Duty, a game that's included in Game Pass Ultimate, but it wants me to buy the more expensive version of it or some shit. I don't know, man. The library button, I've already spoken about why it's bad and I never use it. There's a button devoted to cloud play, which is kind of cool, but I don't think you spend $1,000 on a handheld so you can then, cloud stream your games. But for other devices that this front end will run on, yeah, that makes sense, sure. There's a store button where you'd actually expect to find all of the ads, and fair enough. And then you've got your friends list, again, fair enough. There's a dedicated Xbox button which brings up an overlay that gives you quick access to some of the features, but I really didn't find myself using this button very often. It gives me access to Microsoft Edge Game Assist, which lets me pin Edge to my screen while I bring up a game guide or something. I mean, I guess that could be useful, but I'd probably just prefer to use my phone if I'm gonna be doing that. There's quick access to Gaming Copilot. There's a game capture option where recording is capped at 30 FPS with no way to change that. A really baffling decision on a device that's almost entirely predicated on playing games above 30 FPS. And that's really about it for the little quick bar thing. Again, you can see why I am not using it very often. So what's really crazy about the ROG Xbox Ally X is that it's actually running 3 different software platforms at the same time all the time. One of them is Windows, and while the device doesn't boot to the full Windows experience, parts of it are running in the background, and you do need to go into Windows on occasion, like if you want to tinker with specific device settings, or you want to run Windows Update, which you do need to do on this thing. So that's the base platform layer. On top of that is the Xbox full screen experience, which we've just discussed, that also needs to be updated from time to time using the Microsoft Storefront interface. Sitting alongside all of that is the Asus Armory Crate platform. This is the software that's used to do a lot of things, like if you want to manage this device's power or cap its resolution or enable AMD FSR or change the LED lighting on analog sticks or update the device BIOS or whatever, you're going to do it in Armory Crate. So there's 3 different platforms that you need to engage with if you want to keep this thing fully updated. And none of these platforms keep your actual games updated. If you're installing them from, Steam or Epic or whatever, it'll only keep Xbox storefront games and Game Pass games updated. That's it. Oh, and by the way, the Armory Crate also has its own games launcher if you want. So this device is just super weird, man. It kind of feels like Asus and Xbox are kind of fighting for control over this thing. Their software platforms want to control as much of the experience as possible. And rather than come to smart compromises and kind of divide up the territory, they've basically been well, how about we both have a button that boots to our overlay thing? And how about we both have a launcher that, people can boot their games up from that's not Steam? And also, let's add a button on the device itself where, people can press it and accidentally arrive at the Xbox library when they mean to press the goddamn menu button. If it sounds like I'm being harsh or exaggerating, I'm really not. This is Xbox's first handheld console. They call it that, not me. And it's kind of Frankenstein-esque. It's big and strong, but it's kind of awkwardly stitched together from different things, and you can still see the seams, and it's trying to be something, and it's close to it, but it's not that thing, at least not yet. And were this device significantly cheaper, you'd probably forgive all this stuff because it's a laudable initiative, and you can rationalize the compromises based on the price point, but at $1,000 US, you really do find yourself thinking what I said at the top of this video. You could buy a Steam Deck OLED and a Switch 2 for the same price as the Ally X. And neither of those devices feel like Gen 1 products. They feel polished and premium and finished. And sure, they have some trade-offs in terms of library or performance or whatever, but at the end of the day, I'm playing my Switch 2 a lot these days because the screen size and the incredible form factor of that device make it a joy to play. Now that I'm done with this review, I'm going to be going back to my Steam Deck OLED as my main driver for PC handheld games because again, the screen is just that much better and SteamOS is so nice to use. And I really don't need the extra performance that the ROG Xbox Ally delivers because for the games that need it, I would rather play those games on a console or a PC. I'll finish by saying that there is still definitely a case to be made for this device for a very specific category of consumer. If you have the disposable income and you value the extra performance and battery life this thing can deliver, it makes sense. If you're someone who loves playing competitive multiplayer games on a handheld, this makes sense. If you're really juiced into the Xbox ecosystem and you want a high-end Game Pass machine that lets you get the most out of that $30 a month you spend, this makes sense. And if you're a tech enthusiast who loves experiencing Gen 1 offerings and loves tweaking them so that they do things other devices aren't yet capable of, then this makes sense. But those are some pretty narrow buckets that I've just listed there, and unless you fall into one of them, I'd recommend a Steam Deck or a Switch 2 or both. And that is where I will leave it. So thank you very much for watching. Please do like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and remember to subscribe. I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.